Happy Friday, and welcome to another episode of BrainScratch. I'm John Lorden. Thank you so much for joining me here today as we look into another cruise ship mystery. Tammy Grogan, Amy Lynn Bradley. These are cases we've looked into previously, some of the most perplexing cases that we've looked into on this channel. But for today's case, it might even be more confusing because it seems like there was people around. It seems like the family's being told multiple different stories. Only one of them can be true. What's going on here? Let's start with just a little information about fatalities on cruise ships. According to what might be the first comprehensive study conducted on cruise ship deaths by Bowling Green University and published on the International Journey of Travel Medicine and Global Health website, there were 623 reported deaths on 78 ocean and river cruise lines, and that's between the span of the year 2000 to 2019. Now, I don't think it's any accident, let me just say off the bat, especially with the cases we've looked at previously, there seems to be a lot of secrecy around fatalities on cruise lines, so I was pretty interested to even bump into this. Finally, some research being done trying to pull those numbers together. Out of those 623 reported deaths, 89% were passenger deaths, and 11% were crew deaths. Now, what were the top causes? Ending one's own life and murder, number one cause, accounting for 29% of those deaths. In second place, falling overboard or falling from a height came in, and that was at around 24% of those deaths. So knowing what the number one cause is, would anyone, particularly a family of an employee, be suspicious if they got that dreaded phone call one day? That's the type of case we're looking into. Let's go ahead and start with the news sources and see what we can find about this. And where is this taking place? The MSC Orchestra. We could see a picture of her here, just a giant cruise ship. And this article is actually from Business Insider South Africa. This was posted on December 13th, 2021, and was just talking about the trouble that the cruise industry went through around COVID. Of course, all that got shut down, and then they tried to kind of open things back up in December. The MSC Orchestra tried to go ahead and do a cruise, and it returned from its first trip. I think it was only like a little 4-day trip or something like that, and everything got suspended again. There was people that had to stay on the boat. There was people that were sent off the boat but had to go directly to the airport to get out of the country. Just a lot of things that went on around those challenges that were COVID related for this particular industry. But we know getting into 2022, finally things seem to kind of settle down. Businesses are figuring out how to make all this work. And that also means for employees, people getting their jobs back, including Hombisa Mafuduka. Now, Hombisa, this would have been her second tour. Based on what I could tell from her LinkedIn profile, she actually started with cruise ships in 2019. But then, of course, we know what happens in 2020. That postpones things. So she finally is able to get back to work this year. And then something really tragic happens. Hombisa Nana Mafuduka, 31 years old, died on March 24th while working on MSC Cruises South Africa, and specifically she was working on the orchestra. The Eastern Cape family is angry and distraught. It wants answers. May your child and family be comforted during these difficult times. Very quick to note that Hombisa is also a mother of a 6-year-old that now will not get to know her mom. On social media, a lot of strong feelings erupt around this, especially as you see when we get into the details. It seems pretty understandable. We have a post here. Can you guys please help me? I lost a friend in the most strange way last month. She was working for a cruise ship company. They claimed she had vomited blood and was taken to the doctor where she collapsed and was declared to be no more, only to find out it wasn't true. The first of several variations on this story that we're going to hear as we get into stuff today. But let's learn just a little bit more about the MSC Orchestra. It's an official page, msccruisesusa.com, and specifically the page about the orchestra, combining spacious, elegant interiors with fine dining, varied entertainment programs, and high-quality resort-style amenities. MSC Orchestra promises you a dream cruise with a choice full of countless different ways to relax and enjoy yourself each day. Life aboard can be just what you want it to be. That last phrase just means a whole different thing when you're looking at it through the lens of our conversation here today. How big is this boat exactly? It was built in 2007. She could at that time accommodate 2,550 passengers in over 1,200 cabins. Most inside cabins were later refitted with 2 bunk beds, and therefore she can now accommodate 3,200 passengers. This is a floating city. Her crew complement is approximately 990 people. The Wikipedia page is also quick to point out a crime that happened on here back in 2010. 8 passengers, 4 Bulgarians and 4 Lithuanians, were arrested during 2010 after cocaine worth an estimated 1.4 million pounds sterling was found on board. We did an episode of Crime After Crime about cruise ship crimes, and I looked into that a little bit. There's a lot of stories about drug transport happening on cruise ships. In this particular story, they had special clothing made with just, pockets built into everything, and they were literally carrying this stuff on them. One final thing, accidents and incidents. We've got a whole section here on Wikipedia. I think after talking about today's case, there might be an addition that needs to go in here, but we'll see what you guys think. On February 22nd, 2019, due to an unknown navigational error, MSC Orchestra collided with MSC Poesia as it was departing Buenos Aires, Argentina, and the orchestra also hit a pier. Both ships only sustained minor damage and were cleared to depart. Is the story we're talking about today really about an accident, or is there something else at play? Let's dive in. Hombisa, being from South Africa, we're going to see a lot of different news sources than we're used to on the channel here today. We're starting with this first one, iol.co.za. The family of a crew member who died on board the MSC Orchestra while on duty last month are angry and demanding to know what really happened to her. Mafuduka left home in January to work for MSC Cruises. Her aunt, Lulama or Lulu Mafuduka, who had taken care of Nana. Nana is basically the nickname for Hombisa. And her 3 brothers, since their mother died, said she was told that Nana had vomited blood and was taken to hospital, resuscitated, and on her way back collapsed and unfortunately passed away, making us believe it was a natural death. She said she found it strange that Nana had worked her normal shift that day and didn't complain of any medical problem. And I don't want to breeze over the fact that, we've got a terrible chain of tragedy here with Nana or Hombisa also losing her mother when she was young, her and her 3 brothers, and her aunt stepping into a motherly role to take care of them and raise them. And here we are talking about Hombisa now also losing her life, and a 6-year-old girl that probably is going to be raised by that same aunt again. I think Lulu certainly deserves some credit for just having an open heart and loving her family and being there for them through these tragedies. But back to the story. So strange to be told, hey, she shows up, she's vomiting blood. They take her to the hospital, she's resuscitated, and then on her way back collapses and passes away. And especially because she had been in communication with family that day. She had called her cousin, Zamasa, just before 8 p.m., informing her that she was planning a birthday party for her 6-year-old daughter, which was set to take place on Saturday. And they're talking about Hombisa's daughter. And basically, she was trying to arrange for sending some money back so that they could get a bounce house for her daughter's birthday, because she couldn't be there for it, obviously, with her being on the cruise. She was scheduled to be on the cruise until May. However, on Thursday night at about 11 p.m., so we're talking just about 3 hours later, Mafuduka received a call from the company informing her that her niece had died. They told me that the police were still investigating her death and that I would be called by police on the following day. I waited on Friday, and didn't receive any call. I pleaded with the HR manager to give me the police contact numbers. I asked to come to Durban since they had also said they were preparing to do an autopsy. I questioned why, and how was it being done without us or family members? Apparently, a mysterious cousin had identified her body, she said. Now, I couldn't find a ton of information on who this cousin was. Lulu did an interview with Cape Talk 567 AM that is available online. Of course, I'll have this in the sources down below. I was hoping we might get some more information about this mysterious cousin. Basically, the only thing we learned from her here is she didn't have a cousin in that area. So we don't know how this person, supposedly a family member, magically shows up. No one knows who they are. The host even kind of asks if Lulu has tried to find out who that cousin was, and I don't know if it got edited weird or something. I can't quite make out what she's saying. So if you listen to it and you get a sense of what she's saying in that segment, please drop it in the comments down below so that all of us have a little bit of a better idea. She's got a South African accent. Between that and she's on a phone, and the quality of the phone is not great with the radio show. It's a little tough to make out. So if you guys can help on that, that'd be awesome. But a mysterious cousin that apparently identified the body, and that was good enough for them. They went ahead and conducted an autopsy. Of course, getting the results for that autopsy, also another challenge that this family is going to be facing. Moving on to news24.com, the year started well for the young woman. She had a great job, which would provide financial security and change her and her loved ones' lives for the better. I imagine, especially after having that big gap in time. We know that she worked in 2019, according to her LinkedIn, she was a mess attendant. So basically someone that's working kind of in the kitchen. This job sounds a little different. Hombisa Mafuduka would finally be able to spoil her young daughter and support her family. But 3 months after joining the housekeeping team on the cruise liner MSC Orchestra, Hombisa was found dead. There are conflicting reports on her cause of death, which remains clouded in mystery, as well as when exactly she died, how her body was found, and who the last person was to see her alive. The mystery about when exactly she died could be as simple as a cell phone or a camera not having the time set correctly on it. I'll get into those details more once we explain the pictures. Let's continue, though. MSC says a police investigation is underway. Quote, "Why are the police investigating her death if it's supposedly due to a medical condition," says Lulu, who raised Hombisa after her mom died of a brain tumor in 2013. She adds, neither MSC nor the police have been forthcoming with information. Police spokesperson Colonel Robert Netsiunda says an inquest docket has been opened and investigations are ongoing, and that's all he can say. And pretty much that's all we're going to hear from him through all these articles. I still have not seen anything coming from police specifically about what's going on with this case or this investigation. The family remains in limbo. Questions about Hombisa's final hours going around and around in their heads. Her niece was vibrant, compassionate, and painstakingly precise, Lulama says. Her clothes were always neatly packed in her wardrobe, and she had to clean her shoes every day. The job in housekeeping on the ship seemed perfect for her. Here at the SouthAfrican.com, we're going to see a pretty quick turn in terms of the family's accusations towards MSC. The family of Hombisa Mafuduka, who died while working on MSC Orchestra, have accused the company of lying about their daughter's cause of death. Lulama Mafuduka said she traveled from Lusikisiki to Durban at midnight, and when she asked to see Hombisa's body, she was told she didn't have permission or authority and was refused access. Quote, "The police came after. I also refused to go back home without seeing her. They said I should come back on Monday, and after a huge argument, they finally allowed me to see her body. And to my surprise and complete shock, I found the opposite of what was said. She had a major head injury with a broken neck." To this day, as a family and friends, we are still left wondering what happened to Hombisa. MSC hasn't given us answers. We need help. So I just want to point out, I don't know that it's the exact opposite of what was said. I mean, basically the level of detail they're getting is, she's throwing up blood. with that type of injury, we don't know what caused it. Based on the stats that we were talking about earlier, now potentially we're talking about some type of fall from a high place, some type of situation like that. Is it possible there was a major head injury and that was part of why she was expelling blood from her mouth? I think that's possible. So I don't know that it's the exact opposite. In the earlier retelling, the thing about her kind of being checked at the hospital and then trying to return, like that's a really interesting aspect, but we're hearing that from Lulama, and I can't imagine what you go through when you're receiving a phone call like that. Like, are you really processing fine details in that way, or are you just trying to grab on and hold on to some form of reality when you're being shocked in that way? So it's hard to lean on some of those statements and say, well, wait, they told her that they checked her out at the hospital and then they released her, but on her way back, something happened. I don't know. Based on what I'm seeing, I'm only having comments really. Honestly, Lulama is driving a lot of the press on this. So it's really her version of events that is first and foremost in this. Do we have huge questions here? Absolutely. Now, I mean, I kind of get why the family was confused. First, it sounded like potentially there was some type of medical issue going on. Then you hear the police are investigating it for some reason. She actually goes down there herself, has to fight to see her niece, finally gets to see her niece, and all of a sudden she's looking at her broken with a major head injury and a broken neck. Like, unfortunately, I know with the cases we've looked at before, the information flow on this stuff from cruise ship companies, and quite honestly, it's not just cruise ship companies. This would be big business of any time. If they have a legal team or a lawyer, even a good lawyer, they're going to try to close up any information flow on this stuff because they're likely worried about some type of lawsuit coming their way. And with this type of injury, this is starting to look like, at a minimum, an accident. Outside of that, is there potentially some foul play element that went on here? Possibly. Like, we're completely open at this point to, unfortunately, some of the worst aspects of possibility with what happened here. So I get it. I get that the family's upset and no one's talking to them straight, and that just makes it worse. And that's not to say that MSE is just like, completely out of the picture. We're going to see, I'm trying to be fair. They've made some comments. They've made some gestures that I think are pretty strong in speaking of where they're coming from. And quite honestly, there's one article in particular where they're saying, hey, we want to find out what happened too. I don't know if it's quite that simple. If we really are looking at an accident situation, I think they would have a pretty clear understanding of what happened. If we're looking at something else, then maybe it makes sense that they're waiting for answers as well. But she puts it plainly here, MSC hasn't given us answers. We need help. Continuing at news24.com, it's every parent's worst nightmare to get a call in the middle of the night saying your child has died. Lulu Mafuduka tells Drum of the fateful night she got the call that changed their lives. Her niece, who she had raised, had died. She was due to return home in May, and even though it had been months since she had seen her loved ones, she was still in contact with them. The night she died, she had spoken to her aunt about money she was going to send for her daughter's 6th birthday party 2 days later. The party went on, but it was not as grand as Hombisa would have liked. Quote, she's a child. She was never going to understand. Despite all our confusion and pain, we had to put up brave faces for her to have a great birthday. We could not hire the jumping castle Nana wanted. We just bought cake, new clothes, and had her friends over at the house. And that's a quote from Lulu once again. The family heard that a cousin had already identified the body, but Lulu says no real relative had identified the body, and things were suspicious. She was finally able to see the body, but nothing could have prepared her for what she was about to see. She's a registered nurse with 16 years of experience, so it was not her first time seeing a dead body, but what she saw in that Durban mortuary was a sight she will never forget. Quote, her ears were plugged, there was gauze in her mouth, and her face looked flat. She had serious head injuries and her mouth was open so wide you could see her teeth, which means she must have been screaming when she died. I asked if there was any footage from the ship, but I was told there were no cameras where she was. While the vomiting and collapsing story do not fit with what she saw at the mortuary, there's also another version that she had gone to the laundry to get towels and a watertight door closed her in and squashed her. The third version, I can't believe they can't get a straight answer on this stuff. The third version is that she vomited blood, was taken to the doctor, returned to the room, and then she died. So honestly, this second version, just based on the explanation of what she's saying, the way she's describing that her face looked flat, the type of injuries that we're talking about, this watertight door aspect, there might be something to that. And that kind of raises questions in itself. Is this some type of accident where she was responsible for opening the door, didn't do something properly, the door didn't open fully or started closing before she expected it to? Was someone else responsible? Some of these doors, we're going to look into that a little bit later in the episode as well, but some of these doors have multiple controls. You can have a control up on the bridge, you have a control that's local down on the spot. Was there some type of miscommunication or something that went wrong around that? Lulu was eventually able to take Nana's body home to Lusikisiki on the 30th of March. She says MSC offered to pay for the casket and any other funeral costs. So we do have MSC kind of stepping up in that way right off the bat. There's a couple of other things that they do where we can see they're at least being supportive to the family. It's just, I don't know why there can't be a conversation about, we interviewed the employees that were in the local area, and here's what they're telling us. And here's what we believe happened. I think the only thing that would hold up that type of conversation would be if they were worried about them being held responsible for some aspect of that. If it was a technical problem with the door, or if it was a staff problem in some way, some staff member had done something that caused it in some way. Could they be held responsible for that? That's the only thing that keeps sticking out to me about this story, aside of the possibility that there's something else at play. But let's go ahead and continue here. The family says they've been told that because of the flood devastation, the authorities have not been able to release Nana's post-mortem results. Basically, terrible floods that are going on at this time, during this time in South Africa. And it seems like basically the coroner's office is telling the family, hey, look, we're processing we're doing a lot of postmortems on these bodies because of the floods, and that's backing us up. If Nana was not killed, there would be only one story, and it would make sense. If it was not intentional, there would be a clear story of her accidental death. But all this does not make sense. Why is there such a mystery around her death? I have so many questions, and no one is answering me, said Lulu. And that's kind of where I totally get that frustration. I'm with her on that. Like, if this is an accidental death, just spell it out for the family. Just let them know that that's how it happened. Is this, like I said, it just feels like it's a matter of a company trying to protect itself at the expense of a family having some form of comfort in knowing what happened. Instead, we've got this family just thinking about all these different possibilities, many of which are not going to be the truth. But that can send them in places that are terrifying and disturbing in their own way. Give them some peace, please. I feel they're treating her like she was nothing, but to us, she was everything. I wish they could tell us the truth so we could have closure, because as things stand, nothing is adding up. The family has shared their story on social media, asking for help, and Lulu says a woman has reached out to her, saying her 30-year-old daughter died aboard an MSC ship as well, and she was almost cremated in the Bahamas without her knowledge. Why are our daughters dying on these cruise ships? Asks Lulu. Back to IOL.co.za. Family of woman who died on cruise ship wants her to have peace. Lulu Mafuduka told the Daily News that the spirit of Hombisa had not rested well, as her spirit was still wandering on the boat. Mafuduka accused MSC management of not being honest, arguing that it was not natural and that MSC did not allow them to visit the scene where their daughter was found in a pool of blood. This has caused so much pain to our family. We're still sitting here with no details on what exactly killed her. The story we're being told by MSC is that she started vomiting blood. It doesn't cut it. Nana was a peaceful person who loved her family. We do not even know what to say to her child. We're perplexed, and some of the family members are accusing me of accepting a bribe of 5 million rand from MSC. I would never sell my soul and take money from anyone. I do not even know what got Nana killed. It wouldn't make sense if she was paid off in that way. They wouldn't just give her money like that. They would give her a contract. That contract would definitely say, stop going to the press and talking about this everywhere. She doesn't do any of that. So I'm not buying this aspect that she was given a bribe. MSC Managing Director Ross Volk said, as a family-owned company ourselves, we're deeply affected by the tragic death of our colleague, Hombisa Mafuduka, and have since the early days of this tragedy stayed in close and constant contact with her own family and provided every support to them. The events that led to this tragedy are under investigation by the SAPS, that's the South African Police Services, and we've cooperated with them throughout their investigation and will continue to do so in the hope that more light will be shown on the circumstances and cause of her untimely death. Some measures we have undertaken include providing mandatory bereavement support to the family members. Our presence at the funeral was well received by the family and community, he also said. Asked whether they had refused the family access to the scene where she died, he said they offered the family the opportunity to fetch Nana's spirit before her burial, but the family never showed up. So this is based on a spiritual belief in some parts of South Africa that the soul needs to be fetched so that it could be taken from the spot where the person actually passed away. And part of that belief also is that the body is actually transported back to the place where the person was born. So it looks like MSC is even recognizing, hey, we know that there is a spiritual aspect to this. We know that the family would like to, it's a ceremony that they do at that spot. We've offered it to them, but for one reason or another, the family has not come. Volk says they were offered 3 times. However, they said they were busy with other aspects. They've been advised that they will always be welcome to have access to conduct the ceremony and collect her spirit. Last month, National Police spokesperson Lieutenant Colonel Robert Netshiunda said police were investigating Nana's mysterious death, and obviously he said nothing else. That's about all that we're going to see from that guy. I don't believe it, and I will never believe it, Lulu told News 24. I'm getting crazier by the day, but I will keep asking questions until I get answers. And this article really points to another very important aspect of the damage that this silence can do, that this not being forthright can do. Basically, Lulu's mental health starts taking a hit here. Lulu said the police were not doing enough. She is now sick and on sedative drugs, she said. I have severe dizziness. I can't stand. I'm not coping at all. I'm getting crazier by the day. Lulama described Nana as bubbly and that she loved dancing. She was a hustler and didn't want to spend time doing nothing. She was organized and was more like a second parent to her siblings. She took care of everything and everybody. On Mother's Day, she gave me a gown and told me I was a good mother and thanked God to have me in her life. She was a good cook. She was observant. To me, she was more like my sister, and she was so protective. I would guess, since knowing her mother died of a brain tumor in 2013, I think Nana would have been around 20 years old, somewhere around there, so young adult, and I think that's why this relationship's a little bit different, and she is seeing her as kind of a sister and second parent to her siblings. Police spokesperson Colonel Robert Netshiunda said an inquest docket had been opened and investigations were ongoing. He could not divulge further information. MSC Cruz's SA said that the police were in the process of investigating the details. Quote, as this information should and can only come from the investigating authorities, we are not in a position to disclose or provide any additional information regarding this case until the case has been finalized and the investigation complete. This is making me wonder, is there some aspect where they think that this is like a foul play situation? Like, how would the police be responsible? I mean, yes, it's an accidental death, but it's an accidental death on a cruise ship related to possibly a piece of equipment that's part of that ship. I mean, we've got like we've just got MSC pointing at the police. We got the police saying we can't say anything. We got MSC saying, no, we can't say anything. We're waiting for the police. I don't know. Unless, I'm telling you guys, I wouldn't be surprised if there's an article that comes out that just completely throws this in a totally different direction than we're looking at right now. I can't think of like a time where a police department has come out to talk about the details of an accidental death. I mean, is there determinations? Yes. Typically you would see that coming from like a coroner or something like that. Hey, we deemed this an accidental death. Like that would hit the news. We know that the autopsy's already been complete. First of all, where are those results? Still not talking about him, even this many articles in. But outside of that, there seems to be another aspect to this that is troubling. And are we going to be able to figure out what that is by the end of today's episode? I'm not 100% sure, but maybe something that points in that direction for sure. News24.com, like her family, we too want answers, says MSC. So a little bit of a shift in tone here. Global cruise company MSC Cruises says they're searching for answers following the death of an employee. We want clarity on what happened as much as everyone else, including, of course, Hombisa's own family. This has been our stance from day one. Well, I guess they're saying it's not a change, but in tone, based on the earlier articles, seems like a little bit of a change in tone, at least that they're releasing through the media. Senior management added that they understood the family was upset and hurt. At the same time, it is somewhat disheartening to see incorrect rumor, innuendo, and speculation being aired in the public domain about this awful tragedy and us being directly accused of not being transparent. The first part of that sentence, I kind of get, yeah, sure, it's disheartening that there's incorrect information that's flowing out there around this. The family is desperately asking for help, and all they can do is raise attention to the fact of, hey, look, we've been told these things that don't make sense, and we're asking for clarification, and we're not getting it. So when they get to the point in this quote of saying us being directly accused of not being transparent, yes. And more than accused, I'm seeing your quotes in these articles, and I'm not seeing any clarifying statements about what is happening. If we're talking about an accidental death situation, you've had a lot of opportunities with these different publications to set it straight, and I'm not seeing that. So I'd say this isn't just an accusation of not being transparent. There is a very clear message that could be put out about what has happened here. Could be as simple as she hit a door control. She thought that it was completely open. For some reason, it wasn't. Maybe it's that they don't want to put out a message that she didn't follow proper procedure or something along that aspect. But if that is the truth of it, if that helps her aunt sleep at night just a little bit better than having to take sedatives, saying that she's literally going crazy with all this, then that's a conversation worth having. We said to the family on that awful occasion that we did not understand the reasons for her death. The state performed the autopsy and then released the body to the family. The results of the autopsy are with the police, and we have helped the family to make contact with the investigating officer. We've also helped the family with costs for returning Hombisa's body to Lusikisiki for the funeral. We, as much as her family, want to get to the bottom of this, they said. So they're going through the list of, hey, like, we did this, we did this, we did this. You did everything. I get it. And, helping the family with the costs for returning her body, helping with the funeral. They're making some big gestures in terms of really trying to support the family through this. I get that. There's just a really simple thing missing in all this, and that's good communication. But here they're saying, hey, look, they want to understand it better too. We did not understand the reasons for her death. That would make it seem like it's not a simple accident. So thank you to another article over at IOL. We do get some sense of what the conclusions were around the autopsy. The post-mortem results seen by the Sunday Tribune dated March 27th indicated that Mafuduka's death was unnatural. The pathologist's certificate revealed that the cause of death was due to a blunt force injury, leaving the family with questions as to what happened. Mafuduka said they had written to the police commissioner to have the investigating officers changed due to the slow pace of the investigation. She said 2 new officers were appointed to take over the case. Mafuduka said they received the postmortem results on Monday, citing Nana's death as unnatural. So the story about the door is one really sticking out to me, especially with this conclusion of blunt force injury trauma. And another quote from Lulu here: "The delays have cost us, as the orchestra ship returned to Europe on Monday and will only come back in November." Keep in mind, this is a ship that's doing that tour back and forth. It's going to be away for months. So the investigation not moving very quickly. I mean, if they want to go see the scene, now you're talking about flying an investigative team, out to where this ship is in the middle of the ocean, or trying to find it on a dock somewhere, or waiting several months until November for it to come back. Another interesting thing here, Lulu claimed that the staff members who were on duty the night her niece died were allegedly dismissed. A source close to the case said there were no CCTV cameras in the area where the incident had happened. I can't believe there'd be many areas, but, I suppose if it's like a crew service area, you wouldn't necessarily have CCTV cameras all over the place there. The source gave them some more information. He mentioned that even though the investigation was in the early stages, there were developments on the case. The informer said the next step was to go to the crime scene and do a reconstruction of the investigation when the cruise ship returned. So basically, this is confirming what Lulu said, that they're not going to be able to continue processing this until November. Crime scene reconstruction. Well, first of all, it's interesting they're calling it a crime scene, if this is truly an accident. But doing a reconstruction of the events at the scene seems like something that should have been done fairly quickly. I mean, based on the information that we're getting about her injuries, why are we looking at this months later now? The ship has gone off. They're waiting to do a reconstruction. That's kind of... One of the staff members who was allegedly dismissed before his contract ended told the Sunday Tribune that he does not understand why they were told to go. Quote, "We were told that since we were on duty at the time of the incident, we should go back home. We were informed that this was to protect us and the investigation process." He said that he was dismissed on April 1st and was told that he would get back his belongings when he was off the ship. "I've sent emails to the human resources manager inquiring about my belongings, but I haven't received a response." Explaining what had transpired on the night that Mafuduka died, he said she had gone to the laundry room to get 2 blue towels after 9 p.m., adding that this is where he and his colleague were assigned to work. "We told her that it was not allowed to issue out clean towels after hours, but gave her the 2 towels and she left. What got our attention was the alarm of the watertight door, which went off indicating that it was not closed. When I got there, she was on the floor with blood all over her," he said. Unnamed source, keep in mind. MSC Cruises denied the allegation that they had dismissed the staff members who were on duty that particular night. This is weird. If this is accurate, we're basically hearing that this guy was let go and MSC not having open communication with him at all, to the point he can't even get his stuff back. And this story is kind of interesting. If you are imagining some type of hydraulic door that closes on someone, his story is when we got there, she was on the floor with blood all over the floor. How would that happen exactly? If she was pinned in a door, how would she get released and wind up on the floor? Is there some type of mechanism that automatically would reopen it? I wouldn't think so for a watertight door, but I don't know enough about that stuff. If you have any expert opinion out there, please, once again, use those comments down below and share it with us. Hombisa's grandmother says, "I am shocked, hurt, and traumatized about Hombisa's mysterious death because we don't know what actually happened. It's better when you know that a person died of a natural death, but the fact that she succumbed from head injuries is really worrying me." MSC released the following statement: "Since we first learned of this tragedy, our senior management in South Africa immediately contacted the Mafuduka family to express our sorrow and concern and offer every available support to them. This continues to this day. We have also committed to continue paying Hombisa's salary for 12 months for the family to ensure that her dependents are cared for. We have paid for hotels and travel to help the family visit the port of Durban and to return Hombisa's body to her hometown." So I get it. I get it that with the money, they've been supportive it's really just communication, I think, that's missing around this, or the reason for that silence. I almost don't want to read this. What's this guy going to say now? Robert Neshunda, which his name's spelled different. I believe it's Netshiunda, says the investigation into the matter is still underway. But we have a quote. We can say that a case was opened, an inquest case was opened when a female employee at the MSC cruise ship was found dead, and investigations are continuing. Not very helpful. Over at MSN.com, just a quote from Lulu to kind of give us some insight into where she's at with this. There are moments when you feel like I'm okay, but when you try to dig down and get some answers and you don't get them, that's when you relapse. The only thing that gives me closure is that they managed to give me the body of my daughter and I managed to bury her, but I still have so many questions that are left unanswered. So this is a self-closing door card that you would see near one of these doors. And there's variations on these doors. This isn't how all of them would work. But you can see in this card in particular that they're trying to show you pull the lever down and you're not supposed to walk through it. You have to wait until the door is open completely before you start going through it. A big thing on these doors and a big safety concern that I've found in the limited research I've done on them is how quick they can close. And basically, if it's closing like 8 to 10 seconds, they consider that fast for a watertight door closing. So it should be a pretty slow pace in terms of that thing opening and closing. Which I don't get. On this particular model, they're also showing that there is a red lamp to show you if it's actually remote closing. Like I mentioned, there's sometimes local controls like they're showing here, but they'll also have a control up in the bridge. And if the bridge all of a sudden says, hey, we gotta close all of these watertight doors, they hit a button up there and this thing will just close itself. But there's a light to basically show you that that's happening here. If this is an accidental situation, if there was some type of warning system like that, if there was a failure in the warning system, could that, make MSC a lot more responsible for this accident in some way? I would think so. Looking into this, I found this article over at guard.no, injuries and deaths caused by watertight doors. Guys, there's a lot of instances noted here. This is something that does happen fairly regularly, obviously not to the level of the stats that we talked about at the start of this episode. But in 1989, the newly formed UK Marine Accident Investigation Branch, or the MAIB, investigated an accident on board a cross-channel ferry. A crew member had been trapped when trying to pass through a door while in local control. Basically, that means he has the controls right near the door. He had operated the lever to close the door and tried to pass through while the door was closing. So basically, he hit the lever, said, go ahead and close. It starts closing, and then he tries to get over to the other side, and he doesn't make it. Most accidents happen when the doors have been closed from the bridge control, kind of that situation we were talking about that the light is there for. And crew members pass using local control without waiting for the door to be fully opened. The correct procedure would be to hold onto the operating lever with one hand, while with the other hand grab the lever on the other side before releasing the first. Like I said, these doors, from what I'm seeing in this article, they could be designed very different. In that situation, if there was a lever on one side of the door that starts opening it, and then you're supposed to reach over and grab the other side before you step through, we know she's carrying towels. Maybe she didn't have both hands free. I'm not saying that's what's going on in this particular case. It's just with this example. So this article goes on and on and on. These accidents, unfortunately, they do happen a lot. But in the instances I'm reading about, they find these people pinned in the door. I didn't, at least in this article, I didn't find any instances where the person was found lying on the floor in a pool of blood next to one of these hydraulic doors. It doesn't, unfortunately, it doesn't make a lot of sense. Now, if that wasn't enough, there's some information that starts coming towards the family that makes them wonder, is there even a little bit more at play? Weeks later, the family received images of Hombisa's bloodied corpse lying on what is believed to be the floor of the laundry from someone who reportedly works on the ship. So someone took pictures, wound up sending them to the family. The messages were subsequently deleted, but not before the family had saved copies of the 8 gruesome images. The timestamp shows that the pictures were taken on March 24th, the day that she died. The images, which the Dispatch, that's this publication that we're reading in Press Reader here, has seen, so they verified these photos. They show what appears to be Hombisa's naked body covered with a white sheet. She's not wearing any shoes, and blood-soaked clothes lie next to her body. There's a large pool of blood by her head. A mask and what looks like a pair of bandage scissors lie close by. So this sounds like this is obviously after a rescue attempt or a life-saving attempt. There are no signs of police tape or anyone wearing an official uniform, such as police officer or paramedics. However, there are what appear to be MSC employees. The family believes the pictures reveal tampering with the scene. The Dispatch is not publishing the images due to their sensitive nature. I really appreciate good publications like that. Hombisa's aunt, Lulu, said the SAPS should do their work and find those responsible for the death of her niece. Those who were in that ship tampered with the crime scene, she alleged. They cleaned that body, removed it, and police should be arresting all those who were at the scene at that time. So I think she's upset about what was probably an attempt, a life-saving attempt. I think. It just makes sense. You know, there's severe trauma to the body. You got to see what's going on with that. They're going to try to remove the clothing and try to address the trauma as immediately as possible. And I don't know. I think there's a little bit of an assumption that she was already expired at the time that she was found. And we don't know that that's true. She could have been severely injured but hadn't passed away yet. And they're basically trying to save her life. Lulu said the pictures had been hidden from them. They told me that the accident happened after 9 p.m., but those pictures that were sent were recorded after 4 p.m. on the same day. That's that thing I'm talking about. I just think it's a wacky timestamp. I think if it is from a cell phone, I think their cell phone is set to a different time zone. I think it's that simple. The family also received a voice note from a man who claims to have worked with Hombisa. This gets a little strange here. The man whose identity is known to the Dispatch is currently working overseas. In the voice message, the man says Hombisa's death was an accident. I spoke to her as we were supposed to go home to the Cape together on May 5th. I last saw her coming behind me, speaking to another man. I opened the watertight door and closed it. It appears that she was right behind me when I was closing it. I heard a scream when I was turning back. I tried to open it, but it was difficult until security came. I'm stressed because the chief officer called me and showed me the footage, telling me police officers were going to have a word with me. It was my mistake because I did not see her, that she was coming behind me. Okay, this might line up a little bit with the story that we heard from the guys that were actually working in the laundry. If they were still working in the laundry room, she is stepping away from it. This friend of hers is walking up ahead, hits the door closed. She doesn't get through it. She gets hurt. He basically releases the door. But then why, when the laundry guys get there, it would make sense that she's on the floor. Why isn't this guy around? Wouldn't they have noted, oh yeah, and there was this person that was with her? And the situation he's talking about, there was someone else she was talking to that was behind him. Where's that person? Where's that guy through all this? And I think, honestly, if this is true, does this change the accountability for the cruise lines? Possibly, because now it's an active employee that did something that caused this to happen. So they might have a different level of responsibility on this. Another interesting thing here. What is this? He's talking about footage. I'm stressed because the chief security officer called me and showed me the footage, telling me police officers were going to have a word with me. What footage is he talking about? What is that? Is this the same guy that we heard before that his stuff got left on board? He basically got kicked off the boat and he can't get his personal items back. Is he under investigation at this point? Is there potentially something else going on with this story? I don't know. The Mafuduka family wants answers as to why the ship was allowed to sail for Europe without a thorough investigation being concluded. Lulu said the ship was a crime scene and that the person sent the voice note was a key witness. The police officers should have jumped onto that ship, done their investigation, and made sure that all the information was collected. What do you think, Brain Scratchers? We've got several different stories being told to the family. We've got different people reaching out to them. Some of that information obviously paying off. Those photos, you're not going to be able to fake that. We have a publication that's basically verified them. What part of these stories is true? Is there someone that was responsible for hitting that door? And if someone did hit that lever and someone else was coming through the door, is there a level of responsibility there? Is this at least a manslaughter charge? I have to believe that there would be a procedure for if you're going to hit a lever to close a door, you have to make sure that no one's coming through it. I would believe that that's probably in some training manual somewhere that all these people have to go through before working on a ship of this nature. Are any of you out there cruise ship employees? Can you give us some insight into that, please, in the comments down below? I'd really, really appreciate that. What I very clearly understand is the confusion of this family, their frustration. I appreciate that MSC has tried to do everything in terms of financial taking care of them, but there's something really missing in all that, and that's just the humanity of truth. If this is an employee, if this is a situation where someone hit a switch when they shouldn't have, that should have been conveyed to the family. Is that going to open them up to some further litigation of some kind? Maybe. And maybe that's the stopping block. But we've got a woman that's literally driving herself crazy, trying to reach out for help every which way she can find it. And I don't think any of that is going to stop until there is some answer, some conclusion that's given to her about this, even if they weren't 100% sure. You know, this is what we likely think happened. It was a tragic accident involving another employee. It could be a simple phrase like that that helps with this, but I don't know. What do you guys think? Let's talk about all that in the comments down below. Before I end today's video, I want to give a big thank you to Kelly for joining on Patreon. If you'd like to support the channel, please visit lordandarts.com. There you can sign up for Patreon, sign up for PayPal, buy merchandise, or buy us a coffee like Candy Bishop recently did. We really appreciate you guys. Take care. Have a nice weekend. Please join us on Monday for a brand new episode of Case Cracked right here on the Lord and Arts channel.